Hello, everyone. I am so glad you're here today. Just wanted to let you know that we are back for another episode. We have another hidden figure today. This, of course, is Podbites with Verna. I am Verna Collins Odom. And I tell you every week that Podbites is about three things mainly. We want to inform you, we want to inspire you, and we want to ignite you to do something in your life that you've been called to do. And we do that by inviting folks onto the show, folks who are fascinating, who have interesting narratives, they have compelling roles, and they come on here and they talk about what they've done to get where they are. But not only that, they talk about their highs, they talk about some lows, they talk about challenges, they talk about triumphs. I think our guest is actually in the waiting room. I'm going to try to get her up on the stage. And I always say that when I go, many times it cuts off my audio. So I'm going to push on here and just see if I can get her in. I see somebody in the waiting area. Always trying to figure this out. Oh, there she is. All right, so I'm going to add her and she's going to come up and we're going to start chatting. And as I said, these are folks who are doing interesting, exciting things and nothing different today. We have somebody who you are really going to enjoy. That did not seem to work. Let me try that again. Looking like it might work. It says connecting, and there she is, everyone. Hello, how are you, Dr. Kilpatrick?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. You sound great. You look great. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, you are taking a look right now. You heard me say Dr. Kilpatrick, but I'm going to give you her other name. Her married name is Misha Kilpatrick Moore. I have known Misha since we were kids. Of course, she was a younger kid than I was, but we've known one another, our families for years, went to church together. So I am so excited to have you on today, Misha. I meant to tell everybody, though, before I have you say hello, wanted to tell everybody that Misha is here. I've invited her here because she is a neurosurgeon. She is doing incredible work, and she is one of very few Black female neurosurgeons in our country. And so I want to let you know a little bit more about her in just a second. But first, let's all say hello. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Kilpatrick. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm doing quite well. I hope you're doing well too.
I am so glad that you're here, and I know that you're taking time with us. We tried to schedule this, and I know sometimes you're on call, sometimes you're doing other things, you're running with family, you're living your life. And so I just appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much. So as I just said, to me, it was incredible to hear, and it was all a buzz among the people that we know, because a lot of our friends are common friends, and to know that you are one of 33 Black neurosurgeons who are women in the United States. And by the way, that number is making up about 0.6% of all neurosurgeons in our country. When you hear that, what is your thought of that?
When I first heard it, I didn't believe it. I actually asked the person, who was interviewing me and who told me, I said, are you sure of that? Is that true? And they said, yes, we've done our research, but it is kind of amazing to think about and to hear in 2022 that the number is so low.
It's interesting too, because I was reading a little bit more and finding out kind of reasons that people feel. So I don't want to say in what I found. Let me ask you first, what is your thought about the whys behind that? Have you thought about that a little bit since you found that out, that number out? And what are some whys that you can share with us?
Right. So one thing I think about is when people are deciding what it is that they want to be, oftentimes, especially younger people, they're influenced by the people around them. They're influenced by who
Mhm.
they see. And so maybe if you are a young African American female and you don't see another African American female, neurosurgeon, or you don't see an African American female neurosurgeon around you, that's not something you might necessarily aspire to be. So some of it, I think, is
Mhm.
just what you're exposed to. And then
Yeah.
other things, especially when you start talking about medicine and the field of surgery, and you subspecialize and talk about some of a field like neurosurgery, there's a lot of time commitment that's involved
Mhm.
with regards to the training. And that means there can be sacrifices that you make in your life outside of your career,
Mm-hmm.
and some sacrifices that, you know, maybe you don't want to make in terms of time and effort to put on other things like family and starting families.
So I know that, like you were saying, I read some of that as well. I wanted to get your own thought on it. And you're saying what I read, you know, some of it is representation. So some people didn't see somebody who looked like them who was doing something like what you're doing. Some of it, they said, was also mentors. And I guess that's the same uh, kind of area, because if you don't see somebody, obviously there might not be somebody who can help you get to the level where you want to. The other one was discrimination. And so it talked about folks felt discrimination, and not just people of color, not just Black women, but women in general. So I don't want to thin it out, but I do want to say that those are some of the things that were cited. Have you ever felt, as you, I'm going to read some of your accolades and some of your, I mean, folks, we're talking about, first of all, okay, let me go back, and I'm going to call you Misha. Do you mind if I call you Misha during the interview? Okay. Okay, because that's how I know you, although, total respect for you and totally proud. But Misha has not just her degree, her medical degree, she also has a PhD. She got that in her spare time. Or didn't you do those at the same time, actually? Were
I,
you doing? So I'm
I did.
telling you, this is, yeah, this is no joke. I mean, you were dedicated, you were serious, but you actually did not start down that road. When you went to college, you went to a historically Black college, went to Hampton University. And when you went to school, you weren't thinking necessarily about neurobiology, were you?
No, no. And I'm wearing my Hampton. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm wearing, one of my Hampton t-shirts tonight for the
Love
pod.
that. Represent.
I am a true Hamptonian. But no, I went to Hampton as a music major to start out. So
Mm-hmm.
I grew up playing the piano, and I wanted to be a
Mm-hmm.
classical pianist, and I wanted to play for a symphony or orchestra. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I saw myself doing. And I went to Hampton as a music major with a minor in chemistry.
Okay.
And as I went through my freshman year and was getting ready to enter into my sophomore year, I began to realize that I was having a hard time making my class schedule. I couldn't get the labs for my chemistry classes, which were typically in the afternoon, to match with the practice rooms. You had to have practice time, and all of the practice
So
space
true.
was also in the afternoons. So there was a conflict. And in talking to
Mm-hmm.
my counselor, she basically said, I'm not so sure that you're going to be able to make these two majors and minor, work. And just in talking to
Mm-hmm.
my family, and my mom has always been, a big influencer in my life. And she said, well, think about it this way. If you go through and you're a music major and you come out, and let's say you don't get a job with the symphony, would you be satisfied and content maybe being a music instructor, a music professor, or a music teacher? And I said,
Mm-hmm.
no, I would not be content with that. And she said, well, then maybe you should major in chemistry. and
Wow.
and consider that. And I thought about it,
Yeah.
and in the end I did. I changed my major to chemistry, and I enjoyed chemistry. I really enjoyed both equally. So it wasn't a tremendous loss for me, although there are times now
Yeah.
when I go, I wonder what would have happened if I had just, if I had stuck with my original thought and been a music major. Time may tell.
Wow.
There's still life to live. You
You might,
never know what
exactly.
happens.
I was going to say you might spin back to that. Well,
There's all.
I just find your story so interesting. I love it. I love the fact that you had a path. And even though you kind of were a little bit on that path, you were very focused on music, switched around a little bit, and ended up where you are. And of course, we always love to talk about that on Podbites. How do people get where they are? How did you achieve what you did? And when you were at school at Hampton, of course, you graduated magna cum laude. And then you went to University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and that's where you got your medical degree and your PhD. Now
Right.
you are at this point, when you think about that, you came out of Hampton, someplace that some people might say, well, that was a place. We're speaking a little bit about the discrimination question that I started and didn't finish a few minutes ago, but that's a place where you are in an environment with lots of people who are excelling, who look like you. Have
Right.
you had any experiences with what has been talked about, that there is a concern of potential discrimination as you were looking and making moves, or is that something that you did not deal with that was in an overt way?
Right. I can't say that I've seen overt discrimination, but there has been, and you do see what I consider, that kind of unconscious bias, and that be actually more prevalent than overt discrimination. And what I mean by that is people are comfortable around people who look like them and who they're
Mm.
familiar with. So when you're interviewing for a position, um, and let's say you're interviewing for a neurosurgery residency, you're going to be interviewing the majority of times with Caucasian men, and they're going to be comfortable around people who they're familiar with. And a residency program is, the people who are applying for residency, on paper, they all are, look good, so to speak. They're all
Oh, sure.
credentialed.
Tops of their class,
So
sure.
sometimes right. So sometimes it does come down to these subtle sorts of things that, maybe you wouldn't see on paper. I felt comfortable
Mhm.
with, Dr. X. Dr. Y
Mhm.
reminds me of somebody I know. I could see Dr. Y. I could see me training Dr. Y. So
Mhm.
I think sometimes that's probably a little bit more prevalent than overt discrimination. I
Mhm.
was fortunate and blessed that when I trained at UNC Chapel Hill, when I was coming through medical school, their neurosurgery program, the chairman of their neurosurgery program at the time, Dr. Strada Bernard, um,
Mhm.
was African. And there
Okay.
was a female attending um, there. So there was a female neurosurgeon already there, and there was a female resident, as a matter of fact. So there was already some
Mhm.
diversity within that training program. And for me, that was very important to me when I was choosing programs.
Mhm.
Um, Looking at programs that already had diversity, looking at programs that already,
Mhm.
had accepted women and had minorities was important because there was a sense that, okay, if they were accepting of them, then they may be accepting of me.
How do you find, keeping those things that you just talked about in mind, how do you find your seat that you have at the table with the medical board? You sit on the North Carolina Medical Board. You're a board member and you were governor appointed, and you're the president elect of the board. Is that correct? Of the executive committee at this point. How do you feel? I
That's
know
correct.
that you work on things like standards and those sorts of things. What comes into play when you, Dr. Kilpatrick, come in as you, who you are? Everybody walks through the world only through their own view and through their own vantage point. As you walk through the world and as you sit in that role, what do you think you bring to that? And what are people able to get from a you through that role?
Right. So I do think I do bring my experiences, and I think that's important because when you sit in a role where you're listening to other people, where you may be coming up with different, regulations, when you're saying whether or not this person can have a medical license or not, you bring your experiences, and you bring your understanding of what that person, themselves may have experienced and why they may, have said something or done something. And I think that's important. And I think that's why diversity is important, because we all come from different walks of life. We've all had various experiences, and the way that we perceive something may be different from the way somebody else perceives something. So just being in the room and being able to have that conversation and being able to have that discussion and ask certain questions, I think is important. And I think by having that diversity, that makes the whole group better.
And the conversations, I would imagine, different and more rich, I would think.
Exactly.
One of the reasons why I do Pod Bites is one of the reasons that I do it is that I love the behind the scenes story. I mean, if I could come with you to work, like bring your daughter to work day, bring your friend to work day, that I would be all over that. So take us with you. Give us a day in the life of a neurosurgeon. What are your days looking like? I know days are different, but give us some of some examples of what you do.
Right. So the days can look very different, but essentially as a neurosurgeon, you have what I call your hospital practice and you have your clinic practice, your office. So if you're a patient and your physician has said, I think you need to go see Dr. Neurosurgeon, well, you're going to see that person in an office setting. In a clinic setting, so to speak. So I see patients in clinic, but then let's say we're sitting in clinic and we're talking and we're reviewing your case and we decide, yes, you might require a surgical procedure. Well, that's done in a hospital setting. And so we tend to have our clinic days where we spend the majority of the day in clinic, and then we tend to have our surgery days where we're at the hospital and we're operating. If, for example, you have a surgery and you are admitted to the hospital, then as your surgeon, that means that you have people that are in the hospital that you're going to go see. And we call that doing rounds, where you're rounding on your patients that are in the hospital. And you may round on them at the very beginning of your day before you go off to the operating room or before you start seeing patients in clinic, or towards the end of the day after you've done all those things. And then on top of that, most neurosurgeons take what we call call. You take call. And what taking call means is that you're covering the emergency department, or you're covering after hours situations. So if somebody comes in after hours that requires neurosurgical services, they will call you and say, hi, I have, John Doe here, and we need you to come see him. He's here and he's been in a car accident, or he's fallen down the stairs and he has a brain injury that we need you to evaluate. And that can happen at any point in time, day or night, weekends, holidays. So it can get very busy, but you tend to, as you're going through your training, I think you build up a tolerance to some of that. The calls in the middle of the night, you build a little tolerance to that, and it just becomes kind of a part of what you do. But it can be unpredictable.
One thing I find interesting,
and that's, I think, exciting.
Oh, I would imagine.
Sorry,
One
I cut
thing
you
I
off. You were
find
saying.
really interesting is oh no, I think we're having a delay anyway. It might just be on my end. It sounds very funny. And then, I'll talk to my husband, who's my IT person. And he's like, no, it sounded fine. So I just kind of keep going. So don't even worry about it. We'll get it done. But as you know, my father was in, I don't talk about it a lot because, it's still, still right there. But my father, of course, was in the hospital and spent a lot of time speaking, we did, to the neurologist who would come in, or the neurosurgeon who would come in and talk to him a bit about kind of things that were going on cognitively. And so I know that is really significant, how a person who comes in is working with patients, not just in the clinic, but also in the hospital setting. What do you think you bring to your job as you go in and speak to folks? Because I just have to tell you guys very quickly that Dr. Kilpatrick is very modest. I mean, she's not the kind of person, if you saw her out on the street, she is that person that's just hanging out, doing everything. And the fact that you are here talking to us kind of in this way, you know, as you're, and you're, I mean, you're a regular person, we get that. But my point is, you do some amazing work. And so I wanted to talk about that. What kinds of things do you think you bring to the table? And what is your goal when you are working with your clients and with patients?
Right. So unfortunately, a lot of patients that are coming to see me are patients with serious conditions. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is just make them comfortable. And one way that I find that I can do that is by educating. And so I am big on sitting down, talking with my patients, going through their condition, making sure they understand what it is that I'm saying. I oftentimes will show patients their imaging. If they've had an MRI scan, I want them to see the pictures. I want them to see what I'm looking at and why I'm saying what I'm saying, or recommending what I'm recommending. I find that when people have a better understanding of what's going on, then they're more engaged in wanting to participate in their own, you know, health care. So I hope, and what patients have told me is that I, you know, talk to them in a way that it helps them to understand what's going on. I've had patients say, you know, you're the first surgeon that's ever even shown me my MRI scan or my pictures. And I always say, well, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I can sit and talk to you all day and go through all this medical jargon of about this, that, or the other. But sometimes, you know, just seeing it, it makes it clear. I do try to be compassionate. I think as all physicians try to be. But then sometimes too, just seeing me, you know, I have African American patients all the time who will say, you know, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad, you know, to see someone that looks like me taking care of my loved one, taking care of my family member. I think that there's, you know, that belief maybe that that they know that I'm going to try to do the best that I can for their loved one.
And I think for some people might feel the, ooh, that's getting too personal. But to me, that must be really touching and really telling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, when you're having a hard day, when you're tired, when things are rough, sometimes going back to some of those patient interactions where people just thank you for being who you are and for just being there, you know, that keeps you going.
What are the big topics right now, would you say, the big concerns in the neurological kind of arena? Of course, I always think of dementia, Alzheimer's. What are the big concerns?
Well, Alzheimer's is a big concern. It was not too long ago that a lot of funding, even from the federal government, was put into Alzheimer's research. Cancer research is always high up on the list. There are certain brain tumors that we've struggled with, I'll be honest, in being able to come up with good treatments. More recently, you know, we are coming hopefully on the other side of this COVID-19 pandemic, and there have been some neurological issues that we've seen associated with COVID. There was a increase in people having blood clots, and because of those blood clots, we were seeing an increase in COVID-related strokes, which especially in the Southeast, strokes are already prevalent. And then you add something like, you know, COVID-19 on top of it, and we're seeing increased strokes as well. But I would say those three things, strokes, cancer, and dementia, are high.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about some things that might be personal to you. Just curious, when you think of your life, obviously spent a lot of time in school, spent a lot of time on your professional life. Do you sometimes feel like there is a balancing act that's gone on? Has it gone on? Is it going on? What are your thoughts on that? Where have you stood in that realm?
Right. I always joke, they talk about work-life balance. And I think some people think of that as being, it's a 50-50 work, 50% life outside of work and career. And I say it's really not that. What it really is,
Mm,
one day you may be 99% focused on work. And
mm,
that just means there has to
mhm,
be another day where you're going to be 99% focused on family
mm,
or life outside of work. I think that it's a delusion to think that on a day-to-day basis, you're going to have this nice 50-50 work-life balance. It really doesn't work that way.
mhm,
Um, for me, early on in my career, I was very hyper focused on work and training, and didn't think too much about starting a family, getting married, those sorts of things. I was actually a little, later in my training, and I kind of looked up and I said, well, all this time I've been putting into doing what's important, getting an education,
mm,
starting a career. I hadn't thought too much about um, finding a soulmate, getting married, starting a family. And especially as a woman,
mhm.
you kind of reach a certain age where you go, um, if
Yeah.
I want to start a family, probably now might be time. I talked
Mhm.
to
Oh
my
yeah. Oh yeah.
OBGYN
It
colleague.
happens.
If you are, really, if you're approaching 35, they start, getting a little antsy and saying that you're
Mhm,
late, and starting your family. But for me, I had kind of come to a peace in my mind and in my heart that I was content with my career, and that if I happen to meet someone, that's
mhm,
great and that's awesome. But if I didn't meet anyone, then I was at peace with that. I would be okay with that. Um, but I joke and say I was blessed and fortunate enough, though, that my now sister-in-law actually set me up with we joke about it, but she set me up with my husband, who I
nice.
met when I was in residency. She kind
Mm,
of um, did what I call, she got us together. We went on a date together, a little blind date, and we hit it off immediately. And the rest is history. We were married within the year, and we started a family. But again, later in life, I did not get
mhm,
married until I was, um, I think, 35 or so,
mhm,
and didn't have my children until I was 39. I turned 40 6 months after
mhm.
they were born. And I say children and they because I had twins,
Right.
which
What a blessing, because I mean, that's perfect.
yeah,
Obviously, if you wanted
yeah,
multiple kids, you one shot, you're done.
one and done. As some of my friends say, you've always been an overachiever.
Well, I tell you, I have a similar story. I mean, just you put so much time into your career and you look up, just like you said. And, I was the kind that used to always say, man, I want kids. And for me, I did want to have kids being married. And so I wanted to have kids. So I'm like, okay, I guess I need to be married. It just, I don't know. I think I thought it would happen at some point, but I just wasn't rushing. And then, like you said, you're at a certain age and you're like, huh, well, if I'm going to do this, I suppose, and of course, then you meet the right person. I mean, it's not just let me find somebody and just do it. But yeah, I think that that's a lot of times.
Right.
I think many times women do sacrifice one or the other, and it's hard. It's unfortunate that those are the choices that we have to make, but sometimes that is just how life goes. Sometimes, you just have to wait, and sometimes, God blesses you. I believe in that, and I know you do. God will bless you when it's your time, and so everything works out as it should. When you think of your life and you think of folks that have helped you along the way, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about mentors. I know your dad. We have to throw that out there, of course. Dr. George Kilpatrick, who practices and has been doing that for quite some time in Greensboro, North Carolina. And he's an internal medicine. Is that his area of specialty? Internal medicine?
He's in, but he's specialized in pulmonology. He was the first African American pulmonologist in the state of North Carolina. Yeah. And he's been practicing,
Wow.
yes, for
You
over
guys
40
are,
years. Still going.
oh man. Okay. And
Despite
then your
our efforts
mom?
to tell higher. Yes, and my mother, she is retired from the Guilford County Public School System. She was a teacher for over 16 years.
Okay. So
Also
I
in
know that
Greensboro,
both of
yes.
them with the educational aspirations that they had for you, your brother, your sister. Tell me, I'm assuming were mentors. Any other mentors that you had in your life? Who did you look up to as far as you were progressing with your career? Who were you looking towards?
Yeah, so it's funny. I had a lot of mentors along the way at various steps
Mhm.
along the way. So in college, one of my professors, Dr. Darby, she's actually the one that had me think about medical school because in
Okay.
college, I always thought that I was just going primarily into research, like bench work research. And she was the first person on the college level that said, hey, have you ever considered medical school? And she had me apply to a summer kind of medical scientist training program at Baylor out in Houston, Texas. And I got into that
Hmm.
program, and that's what got me interested in doing an MD PhD. Um, and then once I came to Chapel Hill, I had various mentors there. My graduate advisor, Dr. Whiteman, was very kind of instrumental and supportive for me along the way and getting my graduate degree. All of my professors in residency were all very supportive. It's just, and
Hmm.
always along the way, I always felt like someone would come in and say and do what I needed to keep going on, to the next step. So there were a lot
Hmm.
of different people along the way. And then even some of my close friends, from college that kind of kept me going. You always have your lows and your highs. Um, I have a
Yeah.
really good friend, Leslie Jones Patterson. And I remember at one point when I said, I think there's too much sacrifice that it's taking to do this. And she kind of sat me down and I like to say she shook some sense into me to keep me going.
So
And
that might
that's
be a good
another
thing.
thing that
Have a
that we
friend who
have
can shake some sense.
a friend that can shake some sense and be surrounded by people who are also striving to do great things. I have to put a plug in
Hmm.
for her. She's the first African American female to be on the executive board at Ernst and Young. And so, I just say that to say,
Hmm.
as you're going through your journey, whatever your journey may be, surrounding yourself and having, friends and just acquaintances that are doing great things helps you to be great.
Okay. That's great advice. I was going to ask you for your best advice. Would you say that that was it? The best advice that you've gotten from somebody?
I think that's good advice. The best advice I would say is just be true to yourself and true
Hmm.
to kind of what the dream is inside of you. Everyone has, that
Hmm.
their own, I call it that voice on the inside, that still small voice, or maybe it's God's whispering to you that tells you what it is that you should be doing. And I think sometimes we suppress that. for various reasons, maybe fear that we're not going to succeed. Maybe it seems too much, too far out of reach. But I think if there's something inside of you that you should be doing, then you have to just go for it and try to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes I think the
So
task
listening to
just seems so daunting. It's like you want to do it, but how do I start? How do I get motivated? How? Mm-hmm.
not being
So
afraid.
what is your thought if somebody is in that position where they're like, what do I do? How do I get that first step out? Don't be afraid. Mm-hmm. As far as what gets you up in the morning, if you were to say, this is the thing that motivates me, gets me excited, gets me going in the morning, and I want to compare that with or contrast it with what keeps you up at night. Not, I don't want to say worried, but keeps you up, makes you think, man, I can't put this thing to sleep. I can't go to sleep until I solve this. So what gets you up motivated and what keeps you up at night?
I would say my patience is probably the answer to both. Your patience.
I would imagine.
Up, right? Because you want to do what's right for them, and you know that there's certain things that you can do that are helpful, that can help them, that can make them better. But then that's also what keeps you up at night is the worry and the concern and over am I doing the right thing? Is this what's best?
Mm-hmm. Do you find that as you're thinking of your life, I know we talked about the balance, that the children, the girls, understand kind of what mom does? Do they have an understanding of it and understand? Because I would assume that there are times that you cannot be at everything. How does that work? Do they understand that? Understanding of it and understand.
I
That, of
think they
course, is my
understand
echo
it.
from my iPad.
Yeah, I think they understand it. Understanding it doesn't mean that they always like it. but I do think
Yeah.
they have a great understanding of that. And what's been helpful for me is I just have a very, very supportive village around me. I have my parents. We have close friends. We have what I call the aunties, both blood and unrelated, that really help. I joke it takes a village to raise a child. It must take a small city to raise twins. You have to have that support outside of yourself. And so yes, if there's something that I can't go to, I know that my husband will be there. If he's not able to be there, my mom, who they call Mama Kay is going to be there. We have aunties that are going to come and be there. And I think it's just they've grown up in that village. So that's been very helpful.
Being the overachiever, is that hard for you? Is that hard for you not to be able to be at everything all the time?
It's one of those things that you think about, and then I try not to let it get me down, because it's one of those things that I don't have a lot of control over. If I can be there, then I'm going to be there. And if for whatever reason, if I can't be there, then, I try not to dwell on that. And you move on to the next. There'll be another opportunity. But I try not
Definitely.
to let it
and that's life.
bog me down, because I think,
yeah, and that is life.
Yeah.
That is life. We all have those choices. I mean, I think we have some bleed over. So it's like we're both thinking, both talking, but this is good. This is how good conversations go.
Yes.
So yeah, you can't let it bog you down. And all of us, I think everybody wants to be, the song I'm Every Woman. Okay, we're every woman at some point, but we're not every woman all the time. So we need to just give ourselves that
Right.
moment to breathe And I'm preaching to myself because I'm that same person. You want to be every place, but you can't. So we do the best we can. We hope our kids, understand, and we hope that they're okay. And that's kind of, and you pray a lot. And I know that that's kind of what we do. Well, I am just so excited that you took the time to come by to talk. I'm going to give folks just a little bit of what you've talked about. I call them bites to go, just so people can have kind of an understanding of some of what you said. We're just going to put things in a nutshell. A couple of things you talked about. You said, have a friend, I love that one, who can shake some sense into you. And I have a few of those. A couple of them I think are here watching the broadcast. So I'm going to in a minute let you know who's here and who said hi, because I saw some notes coming up. Also, you said surround yourself with people who are doing great things, and that raises your bar. I mean, it's kind of like iron sharpening iron, I imagine. But that's going to make you do great things because you want to also achieve. You said, be true to yourself and to that thing that is inside of you. And that's really important. And one thing, the last thing that you said, you have a great village. And you said, for twins, it takes a great city. And you have all of that in your friends and extended family and that sort of thing. So that is awesome. So like I said, I'm going to read. Let me step up here. Sometimes I've done some amazingly interesting things by turning off but we're going to try to be safe and careful. Hold on, I'm going to roll back. Well, a lot of folks wanted to see what you were up to. This is great. So, hey, Sean is here. Sean Williams, you know him from Shiloh Days, is on here. Robin Campbell is on here from Shiloh? But that's where we know her. She said, so good to be here to hear Dr. Kilpatrick. So she's excited that she was able to watch. Stephanie Witherspoon Green had come in to watch as well. I think let's see. I hit something wrong. I think Lance Liberman, he is here. And that's your brother-in-law. He said, yay, Misha family loves you, and we are so proud. All of us are actually proud. I know that Robin was the one who first sent me the information about the great work that you're doing and that you were being acknowledged for being one of 33 Black women in the U.S. who is a neurosurgeon. We have Stephanie Covington on here, some more Shiloh folks, old Shiloh folks. She said, hey, y'all, that's my line, sister. That's what she said. Sent you some pink and green hearts. Kelsey Liverman is here watching. I think that's your niece, if I'm not mistaken. Roger Texan is here. He is I call him my cousin. He's my husband's cousin, but he is here watching as well. John, of course, is watching. And helping with the IT. And Danita is watching from my church, Danita Mitchell. She is one of my sisters from my church in Greensboro, my home church, and she's watching, always supportive. Rodney LeGrant Smith Sr. is watching. I know him from Grimsley days and back in Greensboro, and people there are so proud of me, by the way. Griselda Clark is watching. I don't know her, but I'm so excited that you came. Thank you so much for being. You know her? You were nodding. Misha, you might know her.
I do.
And I have another one from, You do. Awesome. Okay, she is your line sister. Yep, Stephanie Witherspoon Green was saying iron sharpens iron. Annette Battle from Shiloh said, we are so proud of the excellent work of Dr. Kilpatrick. Yes, we are. And of course, your big sister is here. And she said she is proud of you, Misha. And I tell you, it warms all of our hearts to see somebody. And I know for you, you're just like, I'm just doing my job. But honestly, when you do it the way that you do it, and that you share the heart that you share with people and the time that you spend, and then your beautiful family, we just say congratulations, kudos. Couldn't have happened to a better person. And we know that you're going to continue to do great work in the field. And we'll just be watching you and just wishing you the best.
Well, thank you. Maybe I'll come out with my piano concerto in about 40 years. I'll circle back around and do something.
You are coming back on. You're coming back on this show, and you are playing that for us. I'm telling you, we need to hear that. Maybe do a little surgery while you're doing it. You can have like a piano in the operating room. What do you think? All right, everybody. You were watching Dr. Misha Kilpatrick. She was here today. Oh, please. We just loved it. We loved it. We loved your time and your energy. Thank you so much. And we're going to let you go. But please, everybody, be sure. I'm not exactly sure. I think this is working better. I was doing Podbites with Verna on a set time, but honestly, I like this. Our hidden figure that we had today was excellent. You just heard from Dr. Misha Kilpatrick. Of course, her married name is it's Misha Kilpatrick Moore. But I know that folks knew you first as Dr. Kilpatrick, as your dad, Dr. Kilpatrick. So we just wanted to let everybody know that they can find you. She's in Greensboro, but you also work. Your office is not actually in Greensboro, though. Where is your office located?
I have an office in Greensboro. My main office is in Kernersville.
Okay, awesome. Well, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time. I will be back on here at some point with another great hidden figure. Thank you so much, Misha. I will talk to you a little later, and everybody be well until we meet back here again. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.